It should be noted from the very onset of this video that I am not a psychologist, nor am I currently dealing with depression, but scrapbooking throughout my entirety of my life, even since childhood, has been an outlet for me to creatively and prayerfully process life and the sorrows and highs of life, and being able to kind of control and formulate the narrative I want to tell myself about my life. Now we'll get into that a little bit deeper, but first, let me show you a couple examples of my scrapbooks. These are the scrapbooks that I have made in adulthood that I leave out in our dining room. In fact, just this past weekend when we had some friends over, they were sitting in the dining room table and started looking through these scrapbooks. I have made one per year since Joe and I got married, and it's been a way for me to kind of process motherhood and highs and lows. Like, for example, in 2020, I was really depressed, struggling that day, struggling most of these days. My son was in the hospital for a very serious week, even in the ICU, but I get to tell the narrative. I get to show the highs that I want to remember and rewrite the low or the hard days however I want to remember them. Here's a page just about our daily runs during the shutdown, because these were the highlights of our days, and we would pray, and we eventually now are living the answered prayers of those prayer walks. Instead of only remembering the shutdown and being home all the time, I get to remember certain highs. Now, today I'm scrapbooking the pictures that my husband and I took of our boys in the Texas Bluebonnets this past March or April, because that was such a moment of answered prayer, where for years I'd been missing Texas but kind of in denial. And to be in those beautiful Texas Bluebonnets, to live here and be able to take pictures of my boys on our way to the grocery store, or maybe it was to church, was just such a God wink. This is the perfect example to show you how I can sit there and praise the Lord by scrapbooking. Now, I'm not so naive to think that all people need to have a creative outlet like a scrapbook to process their life, but I am wise enough to know that sometimes prayer and reflection and talking to God about our lives isn't just in a prayer journal, or isn't even just in a prayer. Sometimes it's in the doing, in the processing. And for me, scrapbooking is really a processing tool to figure out how I want to tell the story or remember the story. And to be honest, I've been wanting to make this video for a really long time, but I've been a little weary because I know it can be perceived as just a shallow, crafty thing. And in fact, a lot of the Bible journaling world struggles under those presuppositions that it's just shallow craftiness. And if I've learned anything this summer especially, it's been those reminders from the Lord that He's not afraid of the craftiness. And I know I mentioned this in a recent video, but He's not afraid of the ways that we need to process Him or our life or pray it out or work it through. He doesn't view them as shallow. And so I've been weary because I don't want to lose the joy in something that I have enjoyed my whole life, because some Christians don't see it as a fruitful exercise. And I know I don't need to spend a video giving a defense of scrapbooking, but I want more Christians to live in the freedom and the acknowledgement that it's a very earthy, very human thing to need to process your life, pray through things, tell yourself a narrative. I mean, that's literally the Bible, to form your worldview and the way that you're therefore going to live. Y'all know I'm here on the internet sharing tips and tools to help Christians be a little less biblically illiterate, which I think we all struggle with. But one huge misunderstanding when Christians are facing the Bible is that they forget that the Bible is an overarching story, and it's the story of God redeeming His people for His glory. It is a narrative. And in fact, we've been hardwired by God to respond to stories, to respond to a narrative, a character facing a problem, growing through that problem, changes and evolutions in that character, eventually conquering that problem. We ultimately see that in the Bible. God redeeming his people for his glory on the cross, looking forward to redemption, even at the promises of that redemption all the way back to the Garden of Eden. When we read the Bible, we are reading God's story. And yet I know so many Christians today are fearful of what seems earthly or just shallow or just crafty. They feel like they have to spiritualize it all and make it outright a Bible journal instead of just a journal, a prayer journal instead of just a journal. And I would rather flip it on its head and say all of our lives should be affected, transformed by our faith, Romans 12:2, rather than our faith is compartmentalized in a journal or compartmentalized into a Bible. I mean, it should affect our scrapbooking. It should affect the songs we listen to, the shows we watch. It should affect our everything, the way we exercise to the way we eat, it all. I guess I'm saying this all because I want to share with you a piece of my life that has profited me so much mentally and emotionally as well as spiritually, but it doesn't outright look spiritual. And so I guess that's my hesitancy is scrapbooking. Yeah, it's not outright something that we do in the church or in worship, but it has become a worshipful exercise for me. And I think it could be for a lot of other people. When I'm scrapbooking, I'm asking myself, how do I want to remember this memory? But I'm constantly asking myself, like, how do I want my boys to look at these scrapbooks and remember their life? Because there will be other people that look at these books. These get to be permanent testimonies to others and to myself of how the Lord has carried us through that day, that month, that year. Books documenting, much like the Bible, the story of God redeeming us for his glory, redeeming our brokenness, our normal everydays and our special days. And while this is not worshipful in the traditional church sense, this is worshipful on a personal level. Maybe it doesn't look like stickers and scrapbooking and getting crafty, but maybe it's something similar where you can process life, process what God's been doing in your life, how he's carrying you, providing, answering prayers, rewriting that sorrow into joy, and responding in praise, because that's literally the point of our story. Ultimately, these books will too decay, and the hours I've spent on them will come to nothing, but my life will stand as a testimony of God's goodness, even through scrapbooking. Now, I'm really curious if you guys want to see more content on scrapbooking, and if you want to see more on my prayer journaling process, which is similar but different in many ways. Check that out right here. This is one of the most powerful things I've done in my personal walk with the Lord to grow that communication and listening. You got to just check this out right here. I'll see you guys in that playlist.